He enters the room knowing one thing. This is not a place where words win. The room is simple, a table, a few chairs, nothing decorative, nothing comforting. Across from him, people are already speaking. They explain, they justify, they fill the air. He says nothing. Not because he is shy, not because he is afraid, because silence gives him time. He listens carefully, not just to the words, but to the rhythm. Who speaks first? Who interrupts? Who rushes to explain? He notices something important. The more they talk, the more they reveal. In many Asian negotiation cultures, silence is not awkward. It is strategic. Talking too much is seen as impatience. Silence is seen as control. He learned this long before this room, not from books, from observation, from watching older men sit quietly while others tried to impress them, from noticing who walked away with better outcomes. They were never the loudest. In the room, the explanation continues. One voice tries to fill every pause, another starts adding details no one asked for. He notices their breathing change. They are uncomfortable. Silence forces people to confront their own thoughts. Most people hate that. So they talk. He keeps his posture relaxed, back straight, hands still, eyes attentive. He nods slightly but does not respond. Inside his mind, he is not empty. He is sorting information. Who is confident? Who is nervous? Who is lying? Silence creates space, and in that space, patterns appear. This is not unique to negotiation. The same principle appears in interrogations. There is a documented technique used across East Asia. The interrogator asks a simple question, then waits. No pressure, no threats, no follow-up, just silence. At first, the subject answers briefly. Then, the silence returns. The subject starts to feel exposed. They begin to explain more. They volunteer information. Not because they are forced, but because silence feels heavier than words. In one real case, an investigator said almost nothing for hours. He asked a question, then sat still. The subject spoke for over 30 minutes without interruption. Everything important came out unprompted. Silence did the work. Back in the room, the explanation finally stops. All eyes turn toward him. This is the moment most people rush to fill. He doesn't. He lets the silence stretch. 1 second, 2, 3. Someone shifts in their chair. Another clears their throat. The power dynamic changes. Now they are waiting for him. When he finally speaks, he uses fewer words than expected. Short sentences. Neutral tone. No emotion. Because silence has already done the heavy lifting. His words land harder because there are so few of them. In traditional Asian training environments, this principle is taught early, especially in martial arts. Students expect constant instruction, correction, praise, feedback. But often, the teacher says nothing. The student performs the movement again and again, in silence. That silence is not neglect, it is pressure. It forces self-correction. Awareness sharpens. The student starts to notice mistakes on their own. Silence accelerates learning. There is a reason for this. When words stop, attention increases. When guidance disappears, responsibility appears. Silence transfers weight to the other person. That is power. He remembers his first exposure to this lesson. He was young, eager to prove himself. He spoke quickly, explained himself, justified every decision. He thought clarity came from talking. What he didn't see was how much he was giving away. Uncertainty, neediness, ego, all visible. It wasn't until he watched someone else succeed differently. Someone quieter, someone who waited, someone who allowed silence to do the uncomfortable work. That person was never rushed, never interrupted. Others adjusted to them, not the other way around. In hierarchical systems across Asia, silence often signals rank. The higher the position, the fewer the words, not because they know less, but because they don't need to prove anything. Speaking less signals confidence, and confidence commands attention. Back in the room, he feels the shift. The people across from him are now more careful. They choose their words slowly. They look for reactions that never come. Silence has made them visible. This is the part most people misunderstand. Silence is not passive, it is active restraint. It requires control. Most people speak to release tension. Silence requires holding it. That's why it's rare. There is another real-world example. In high-stakes business meetings in Japan, it is common for proposals to be met with silence. No feedback, no immediate reaction. Western negotiators often panic. They start adding concessions, explaining again, lowering their position. The silence was never rejection, it was evaluation. But impatience turned it into leverage for the other side. He knows this, so he waits, even when it feels uncomfortable, especially then. Inside, he feels the urge to speak, to clarify, to push forward. He ignores it. Silence is doing its job. Eventually, someone across the table speaks again. But now the tone is different, more cautious, more respectful. They ask a question instead of making a statement. Silence has flipped the dynamic. This principle extends beyond rooms like this. It applies to conflict, to arguments, to daily life. The person who reacts first usually loses leverage. Silence slows escalation. It creates unpredictability, and unpredictability commands attention. In many Eastern philosophies, silence is linked to mastery. The idea is simple. When you speak less, you observe more. When you observe more, you understand more. When you understand more, you act better. Silence is not the absence of action. It is the preparation for precise action. He finally stands. The conversation is over. Nothing dramatic happened. No raised voices, no clever speeches, but the outcome is clear. He leaves with more than he came for, because he didn't rush to fill space. Most people leave power on the table every day. They explain too much, react too fast, speak to be seen. Silence requires confidence, and confidence changes outcomes. The lesson is not to never speak. The lesson is to speak deliberately, to understand that words are tools, and tools work best when used sparingly. Silence forces others to show their hand. It gives you time. It reveals patterns. It shifts control. In a world that never stops talking, silence stands out. That is why it feels uncomfortable, and that is exactly why it works. Silence is not emptiness, it is leverage, and those who learn to use it rarely need to raise their voice again.